right, well, welcome to a LEGO Friday. It is a full review Friday. Thank you so much for joining me. Whether you're listening in on wherever your favorite podcasts are listened to, or whether you're watching me on YouTube at the Imagination Brick Shop, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me. Glad you could be with me here on a Friday or whenever you're listening to this. I love Fridays because, well, not only that it's Friday, but because we get to review a LEGO set. And I thought it would be really, really fun to review a really interesting limited edition set. It's a set that you wouldn't normally look at. You couldn't ever find on LEGO shelves, but definitely one that we have been talking about the designer series. If you have been tuning into this podcast, I have been talking about the LEGO Bricklink Designer Program really on and off for a while right now. And the voting for Series 6 is still happening. It's right towards the end of it. You can vote on Series 6. And if you don't know what the LEGO Bricklink Designer Program is, it's basically people like you or me. We get a good idea in our head and we design our own mock, my own creation. And we make that LEGO set and we submit it to Bricklink. And people vote on it. It's crowdfunded. And if enough people give you a big old smiley face, you could be one of the top 5 finalists that then gets voted on by LEGO in pre-orders to say, should we fund this set? And if the set gets funded, then the set gets built and we send it on out. That's essentially how it works. But it wasn't always a smooth process. I went into it a little bit on the previous broadcast where I talked more about what Bricklink is, how the designer program works, but in a nutshell, Bricklink was originally an independent company that is now owned by LEGO. And they have utilized Bricklink to really great success, in my opinion, because they can do sets on Bricklink that they just would not be marketable to a mainstream audience. So you've got your Star Wars, you've got your LEGO Friends, your Marios, your Harry Potter, and you can sell a whole lot of those sets. But Bricklink is a little bit more niche. You can sell really unique looking sets that for some reason may not really make the mainstream, but there's just enough of an audience where essentially LEGO can make their money. And so today we're going to look at a particular set 910003. Yes, that's right. These always have long set numbers to it, but it's the Mountain Windmill. So if you are watching me on YouTube or you want to see what the windmill looks like, you can Google that, or you can just tune into the YouTube page. I have it next to me right now in all of its gloriousness, spinning around so you can see it. It is a really unique and really cool looking set, and we're going to go over it. I'm going to give you all the things that I love about this set. I'm going to tell you all the things that I don't love about this set. And before we're done, I'm going to give you a final ranking. And that ranking I base on the build experience, the playability, the displayability, and the overall value. So is this worth your money? And really the value on this one in particular is going to be based on 2 things. One, what was the value when it was initially released for pre-order, and then what is the value now? And then I'll give you that final overall thoughts, final impressions, and we'll call it a day. So what do you say? We dig into this? So here we go. The LEGO Mountain Windmill. First off, can we just say it's such a gorgeous set? It's so beautiful. This set stands at, let's see, it's about 20 inches tall. I don't have the exact measurements with me, but it's about 21 inches tall. It is about 14 inches wide, and it's about 6 inches deep. So it's not a small set. It clocks in at just over 2,000 pieces, 2,085 pieces to be exact. And at the time, for pre-orders, retailed for $180. So if you're doing the math, that turns out to be about 8.6 cents a piece. So really not a bad Lego in terms of value. But let's just first take a look at it. It's really unique in that it is built, it says it's a mountain windmill, but the way the mountain is set up, it's honestly, it's two stands offset of each other, really beautifully brick built snot method where the studs are not on top, mountain style, which a bigger platform on the right side, which actually holds the windmill portion of it. And then a smaller little mountain with some burp, I think is what they call them, the burp bricks that hold up the other side of the windmill house. And so it's really not just a windmill. It's a windmill and a fun little windmill cottage. And one of the allures of this is that the windmill itself, it actually works. And so there's a crank at the top, and it's really a very smooth motion. The windmill itself, if you turn that crank, can actually move like the wind is blowing, which is just gorgeous. You can also adjust the windmill if you want to turn it. You can actually turn it about 90 degrees, or you can turn it to actually face the back. Now, I will say the turning mechanism itself does have some limited capability, because if you try to turn it too much, it will turn right into the windmill house itself. So that's a little bit of a limitation, because as far as when you want to display it, to me, it would look really cool if you could have the windmill faced perfectly front, but you just can't do it with this set, because if you try to turn the windmill itself to where it's facing completely to the front, it actually hits the house itself. So kind of one of the little interesting quirks. Another little interesting quirk is the build experience. When you go through and you look at this, you're like, oh, that's really neat. But one of the things you get used to with Lego, and I think we kind of get spoiled after a while, because this wasn't always the case, is that the instructions are usually very easy to follow. You don't have to know how to read. You just have to know how to look at a picture and count to basic numbers, right? Well, the weird part about these BrickLink designer sets is, I think, to keep costs down, there's no official manual that goes with this. They included a pamphlet, and that pamphlet had a QR code. And when you went into that QR code, it gave you digital instructions. And I'm just going to be real with you. If you've ever done Lego with digital instructions, it's just not as good. That's just the simple fact. Sometimes the coloring doesn't look exact, especially if you're dealing with different shades of browns and greens. Sometimes they can all look like the exact same color, especially on the computer. But overall, not a huge detractor, but it's definitely something to consider, that if you are actually going out to buy these sets yourself in the designer program, there's typically just a little pamphlet that says, go here for digital instructions. So something to take note. I will tell you, though, as far as when I was putting it together, I'm going to turn it around so I can see the backside of the little house. It's just a cool little build. There are 6 separate rooms for this set, and it's like you're climbing up these little ladders. And in one room, there's a bookshelf, like a little study. In another room, it's clearly a little dining room where they can eat their gruel almost. It just doesn't look like a normal dining room, right? It looks like a rustic cabiny type dining room. There's another little maybe a writing area that's above the study, a little place where they can look out the windows. And then it's really kind of funny, right under the windmill itself, there's a little space where they include a little rat. I'm just going to call him a pet rat because, that's nice. Maybe it's little Scabbers from Harry Potter or something. But they include a little 1x1 cheese slope done in yellow. So literally, there is a rat eating cheese in this set. So that's cool. One of the quirky parts, though, of this set is the bedroom is in the attic. And not only is it in the attic, but there's no real roof over the bedroom itself. So the bed, it's almost like it's just out in the open, which I kind of find a little odd. I'm not going to lie. I'm like, okay, well, I guess kind of maybe they didn't know how to bring the roof up and over to make it look like a completed set, but it looks like there's a bed on a flat roof is what it looks like. So the color scheme is nice, but that's a little strange. And then last but not least, there's a little like lookout tower, if you will, where they can sit, and there's a little Lego telescope and you can look at the stars, and that's really, really neat. At the very top, and I think this is an interesting design choice, there is another roof for the actual containment area for the mechanism that turns the windmill. But what makes this weird is the color scheme they used for the roof was like hot pink, like real hot pink, 2 shades of pink, which if you're building the Lego Friends set is kind of like, okay, cool. But this is a Mountain Windmill, right? And so it's like, why did they have one roof in light brown or that light nougat color, and then they have another part of the roof that's done in hot pink craziness? I don't know. I think that's a really interesting, kind of quirky, kind of weird design choice, but there you go. They did that. What I think is ultimately what happened here is it's a gorgeous build, right? I love displaying it. It's very unique. I love that, you're not just going to see this set on every shelf, right? But what I think is strange to me, and what I maybe said, oh, this is probably why it's not an official Lego set, is because it's an awkward build. It's a little unstable. Like if you go to pick this set up, its connection points of how it connects one side of the mountain to the other is not super stable. Kind of reminiscent of more Lego sets that you would put together maybe 15, 20 years ago, where you've got 1 or 2 connections versus like, why aren't there a couple more Lego Technic pieces in here where you could actually stabilize the house itself, or interlock the pieces where they will have some more snot method where you'll actually build a wall out, but then you'll have the snot pieces out to the side, and you can put a flat tile on there. And by putting that flat tile on there, it actually locks the building wall in place. Like, it's a nice little simple, ingenious building step, and it's not really utilized here, which I find a little bit strange. So I'm always hesitant to move this set around a lot. In fact, as I'm spinning it here, looking at it, I'm just kind of sitting and looking at the windmill itself, and I'm just like, I kind of hope, I'm like, man, I hope that doesn't fall, because it does slope a little bit. It leans a little bit. The windmill itself is kind of heavy. It's gorgeous, but it does kind of just ever so slightly lean forward, which it's like, okay, if I'm not careful with this set, and when I have moved it before, it has fallen apart a little bit. So that's also a consideration. I think Lego probably would never make something like this as an official set unless it was a lot more stable. So, but you can't argue that it's a unique set. I would say, if I had to guess, there's about 9,000 of these out in the wild. So if you go to a site like BrickCast, one of my favorite sites that I love to use to track Lego with, I think they said it was like 1,000 people who use this site say that they have this set. I mean, take that with a grain of salt. You don't know if it's true or not. But when this set was made back in 2022, it needed at least 3,000 pre-orders to get built. And it did that. In fact, it did not sell out, but it got close to selling out. And so you had to have 10,000 pre-orders to sell out. So they were only going to ever make 10,000 of this set, which, right? How cool is that? Just super limited. But it never sold out. And so by the time it finished, when you look at that line, my best guesstimate would be there's about 9,000 of these out in the wild. And if you want to find one, you can go to eBay or Amazon or things like that. They don't come up as often as other sets, but when they do, they're actually, this set in particular is still pretty reasonable. New in box currently goes for around $250. And if it was on sale, pre-sale at $180 a couple years ago, that's not bad on growth, but definitely not out of the range for something where you're like, well, that's just too expensive for my wallet. So for 2,080 pieces, that's not much more than you would spend on just a regular Lego set nowadays. And if you wanted to find it used, like if I tried to put this set up for sale today, the average, like the last 6-month average on sales, is around $183. So essentially the exact price that I paid for it in pre-order. So very doable. If you're looking at this set, or if you want to, maybe you're a completionist and you want all the designer sets and you want your hands on this set, this is not going to be the hard one to get. So the hard ones are going to be your castles or things like that. Like I say, though, I really, really have enjoyed this set. I think it's very unique, and I think it's a great set that just shows off what can happen when people like you or me can build Lego, And so my salutations to the designer. Obviously, it's not as refined as maybe one would hope for an official Lego set. But I think the ultimate goal was accomplished here, and that was to generate something that looked beautiful, but also was functional by having a turning windmill. And by that regard, they definitely did their job. So to end, I want to give you my 4 ratings. Like I said in the beginning, I talk about build experience, playability, displayability, and overall value. So build experience for me is a 7 out of 10. I don't think on many of these sets you can get beyond that. Like I say, the digital instructions are kind of funky. There were multiple places in the digital instructions where the building techniques weren't entirely clear. It kind of jumps around a little bit. It's a pretty unique and diverse build, so I wasn't really bored. I mean, you had things like there's a little cave at the bottom that you start with underneath everything, where it kind of acts as a place where I'm just going to call it like a wine cellar or whatnot, because it looks like they put little kegs in there and little bottles of wine and whatnot. And so it's really kind of cool. So it's fun. It's a unique build, but definitely one that had some frustrating aspects. Like when you built a section, you're like, well, why did I do this first? Why wouldn't I have built this first? Or it's really weird to get my fingers in here to try and get this to attach. Or I'm trying to attach a roof, but it doesn't want to attach really well. And so overall build experience, while fun, was not necessarily very smooth. So 7.0 up there. Playability? I'm going to give it a 6.5. I think there's a lot of playability aspect in the fact that you can put a lot of minifigs up in the little rooms and pretend, and you got the windmill that actually cranks, which is really, really cool. I just think because the set is a little bit more fragile, I think if you really tried hard to play with this bad boy, it's going to fall apart on you. And when a set falls apart, it takes away from the play experience. And so besides the windmill moving, it doesn't come with any minifigs or things like that. So you got to have your own minifigs if you want to actually get this displayed with something and to play with something. But overall, there are playable features. It's just without any minifigs and with the fragility of it, I would say 6.5 is probably a good number for this. Now, its strongest number, I mean, it ties the last two, but I will just tell you, displayability, this is a 9. 9 out of 10 for me. I really think it's a beautiful set. It displays really, really well. It's good proportion. It's minifig scale. Like if you had a minifig character standing outside of a windmill, like a big old Dutch-looking windmill, this would be about the right size. And then there's a little house to go with it. It just looks really, really gorgeous. Good use of color. Like I said, besides the hot pink roof, it's what I would think a mountain windmill house should look like. And so as far as just looking at it, it brings me a lot of joy. So I'm going to give that a 9 out of 10. And then finally, value. And I talked a little bit about this. At $180 back in the day, that puts you at less than 9 cents a piece. And there are definitely some big pieces in here, which things like that usually jack up the price a little bit, right? But there are no printed pieces. There are a fair amount of small pieces, and so the price per piece seems just about right to me. This seems appropriately priced for what it is. So value, I also would give this a 9 out of 10, which, if you're keeping track at home, 7, 6.5, 9, and 9, that rounds out to the final score of a 7.9 out of 10. Almost an 8 out of 10 set. Really, we can kind of round it to that. And I will say that pretty much, I think, does it justice, because I love it. But it's definitely a set that I don't think everybody is going to love. I don't think everybody obviously wants to get their hands on it. And clearly, when it didn't sell out back in 2022, there's only about 9,000 of us, give or take, that really were interested in this set. So, but I hope maybe you seeing it or you hearing about it, you're going to look at it and think to yourself, maybe you do want this set. If you do, you can still get it, like I say, at a decent price, and I kind of hope you do. You let me know in the comments if you do get this set, or if you own this set. Did you have a similar experience? You know, was the build process a little funky, a little weird for you? Do you think it's a little awkward and fragile like I do? Do you think the hot pink roof is strange? You know, let me know in the comments below. But with that, I just, if you're watching, I just keep turning it. I just keep staring at it, because it's a pretty set. And so I'm just going to keep turning it and staring at it and enjoying this set. And I guess until next Friday, our next full review Friday, I guess I'll just have to catch you on the next one.